Russell and I did 2 live streams actually in the same day when Kshama Sawant took the lead in the recall vote. And it looked like the nays had it, which is, of course, great news. And that was really awesome. And so I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I do want to talk to you about this. One of the reasons I thought of you to co-host this with me is because you conceived a fundraiser for Kshama all the way back in May. We raised a little over $4,000. You and I hosted it. You organized it. I was lucky to be able to host it with you. We had Liza Featherstone from Jacobin on there. We had Katie Halper and Jamal Thomas, and in coordination with the Kshama Solidarity campaign, we raised I think almost $5,000 that night, maybe even a little more. Last I heard it was 4 going on 5. So in a race that ended up that close, no one's effort was wasted. I mean, that this was a 240 vote margin out of 40,000 votes. It was extraordinarily close, and so I think we deserve, certainly you deserve, to take a bit of a victory lap.
Well, I have to say that I've loved Kshama Sawant ever since I first found out who she was. I've had an opportunity to interview her several times on my show, and once live when I was down covering Occupy inauguration, when Trump was inaugurated, and I had her and Chris Hedges and Jill Stein and Chase Iron Eyes that night. It was sort of an impromptu show in the green room, so to speak, before they went on stage. And I just really love the way that she uses her office like an activist. You know, she actually has a staffer that is a community organizer to work with movement leaders and utilize the people to lobby for their issues. And she was the first city, because of her, Seattle was the first city, even before LA, to get a $15 minimum wage. They just passed this historic Amazon tax to fund low-income housing, which is why, you know, the business class there was trying to unseat her, and they failed. They've tried before. I think it's really interesting about this recall effort is they figured if they did a special election that not that many people would turn out, you know, whereas a lot of people were turning out in November last month. But she actually increased the vote of young people. I was reading in, I guess it was, I don't think it was Jacobin, it was somewhere else, but the youth vote, 18 to 25, increased 300 people from the previous election a month earlier. So it went up from 43% of that age group voting to 53%, which is very huge. And then they raised $1 million, the opposition, which was like real estate developers, big tech, Amazon, and the like, to basically create this situation where people thought that she was lawless, you know, that they had these spots calling her a law-breaking extremist who would encourage the homeless to take over stately neighborhoods and bring in mobs to attack City Hall. I mean, it was crazy. I was looking to see one of those ads. I couldn't find one online. And then there was another corporate PAC, Better Seattle, that raised an additional $200,000. But, you know, Kshama's, the anti-recall campaign was able to meet them, match them financially, which is a testament, and of course, exclusively through small dollar donations, which is a testament to how much she's accomplished for the people.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And, you know, I interviewed Kshama's former campaign manager for their 2019 campaign, Brian Coloris. And one of the things that struck me about him and about the whole team, even when we were setting the fundraiser up and when we were doing our tech checks and our sound checks and everything, is just how confident they are. I mean, it is so refreshing and so inspiring to see a left that is that confident and that unafraid of itself and unafraid of its own shadow. You know, I mean, they just lean into any criticism you have against them. You know, they are proud of the enemies they make. You know, they wear that as a badge of honor. You know, I mean, here you had a recall campaign that was basically going after her, basically saying you're too difficult to work with, basically.
Yeah.
And they lean in and say, yeah, of course we're difficult to work with. We have to be difficult to work with. That's her theory of change. I mean, she's a true Marxist in that sense. in the sense that her theory of change is based on struggle and conflict and confrontation, not this sort of, fake corporatized vision of, you know, political discourse as a sort of meeting of the minds between reasonable people on both sides of the aisle. I mean, she doesn't believe in that, and she doesn't pay lip service to any of that. That's why she's not a Democrat.
Right.
That's why she's, socialist alternative, and she just, she wears everything on her sleeve. She's got nothing to hide in that sense, and it's so refreshing and so inspiring to see a group of people, not just her, but the group of people who she has organized in her district there and around the city and around the state. And we had people from all over the world. We had people from Ireland tuning into that fundraiser
Right.
when we did it.
Right.
People all over the world respond to that because they are starved for that. I feel like the left is really starved for a candidate, a leader, and a movement that is just that ballsy and that confident and that willing to just stick their thumb in your eye as far back as they can go, and make no apologies about it.
Right.
It's fantastic, And look,
Well,
I don't blame the people on the council for thinking she's a pain in the ass, but you know what? Her response would be, "Damn right, I'm a pain in the ass. That's what I'm supposed to be."
that I don't think that's why they said they were trying to recall her. That may be why they were trying to recall her, but they had three charges.
They have, right. Yeah,
They
yes,
had
the
three
charges.
charges. I just should tell people that were pretty bogus. One was that she organized the Black Lives Matter protest, which she didn't. She just spoke at it, and she apparently let them into City Hall for 1 hour during the pandemic, which she didn't seem to think was a problem because it was a peaceful protest, and they had the First Amendment right to do that.
And City Hall was open for business. It wasn't being quarantined for sanitary purposes. Like, it wasn't open for business at the time she let people in, but like, City Hall was not permanently closed. She let them in after hours.
And maybe that wasn't maybe the Black Lives Matter thing.
No, that was it. You're right. But it's just that
but there was another thing that they accused her of organizing, which was marching to Jenny Durkin's house, the mayor.
Yeah,
and
totally bogus.
At that thing, but she didn't organize it. And the third thing was using her campaign office or staffers or stamps or whatever to send out something regarding the Tax Amazon campaign. And she already admitted that that was wrong, and she paid a fine of $3,000 for it. But basically,
which was double what she took out.
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So, I mean, they were kind of grasping at straws there. And it's really funny because, yesterday Friday I had lunch with a state senator here in Asheville, and she's very, she's liberal. I wouldn't say she's, she's progressive, but she's more liberal than progressive, and she's certainly not radical. And she's proud of the fact that she can work with Republicans. And it's very difficult to work with the Republicans in a Republican state. They do have the majority, but they don't have a supermajority, at least not yet, because basically they've just tried to redistrict, not an independent redistricting, but the Republicans themselves drew these maps, and they're being challenged in court on partisan basis and racial basis. And if these maps don't get overturned, they will probably get a supermajority. Right now we have a Democratic governor, and he's able to, with his veto, cancel some of the more egregious things they try to do. But if they don't get these maps overturned, they're going to have a veto-proof supermajority. So 3 local representatives, 2 state senators and a state assemblyman basically resigned. One of them resigned right away. I mean, her seat has to be filled. She's not even serving out the rest of her term. And the other 2 are going to serve out the rest of their term. But the basic reason is they can't get anything done with the Republicans, because the Republican Party, as you know, since Newt Gingrich, has been completely irrational, crazy, extremist, radical. You can't work with them. And they try to be reasonable and present reasonable arguments. And most of the time, it doesn't work. So they don't pay them that much. They pay them $12,000 a year. They have 1 staffer in Raleigh. They don't even have district offices here in Asheville. And it's just not worth it for them. And so I was saying, look, you can't elect a reasonable person. You need to elect a Madison Cawthorn of the left. like somebody who is going to use that office, like Kshama Sawant, where they're going to bring into Raleigh all these different movement leaders with their constituencies to try to meet with these Republicans. If they won't have citizen lobby meetings with them, then they need to occupy their offices the same way the Sunrise Kids and AOC occupied Pelosi's office on the Green New Deal, or they need to, pack the State House the same way the California Nurses Association packed the State House for our single payer bill in California. They need that kind of a person when you're in the opposition party of a Republican state where you can't work with Republicans. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, sure. But I mean, that's part of why Kshama is persona non grata. I mean, that's part of why this recall. I mean, that's why I said, like, yes, the subtext of 2 out of those 3 charges is that you're just too difficult. You're bothering the mayor at her house. You're letting Black Lives Matter protesters into City Hall. This is our space. You're letting them in. You don't work with us. I mean, I listened to Henry Bridger, I think his name is. If I'm getting his name wrong, I don't care. Fuck him. I listen to these people and they say, they are Democrats. I mean, he said, I'm not right wing, I'm a Democrat, because the Kshama campaign used to, would always say there's a right wing recall. And his retort, pretty laughable, I'm not right wing, I'm very much a Democrat. Right. Ha ha. Look, they are invested in selling to the public the idea that compromise can be met and that deals can be brokered between reasonable people on both sides of the aisle. And a movement candidate like Kshama Sawant just doesn't jibe with that narrative. And so, yeah, I mean, look, I think you're right. I think the chances of a candidate like that breaking through inside the Democratic Party are slim to none. I mean, you had people, I talked about this on a live stream I did the other night. You had people saying if Kshama loses, she should primary Jayapal for a Democrat in Congress. Like, you think the Democratic Party is going to let someone like Kshama Sawant anywhere near Congress? I mean, they rigged it against Bernie. They rigged it against Nina Turner. I mean, Kshama Sawant makes Nina Turner look like Margaret Thatcher. Okay,
yeah, look
you're
what
not. Kshama Sawant's not breaking through in the Democratic Party.
In 2017, I did a show with Levi Tillerman. Remember, he recorded Steny Hoyer telling him to drop out.
Oh, yeah.
Colorado. I interviewed Kara Eastman, who was running against Brad Ashcroft in Nebraska. She was pretty centrist Democrat, and they sabotaged her. I mean, they just don't want anyone challenging these incumbents. And of course, what happened to Alex Morse with Richie Neal in Massachusetts. So, that's why I'm not a Democrat. But the thing is, when you're in a right-wing state, it's a little bit different, because like when I go, one of the first things I did, I was so proud of myself. Little did I know I would be, excoriated for this. But I was, when this guy, Jeff Jackson, the 2 leading Democratic candidates for Senate, by the way, in North Carolina, do not support Medicare for all. And I immediately joined the Medicare for All coalition when I moved here and tried to get, we tried to get some clarity from him, and he wouldn't really tell us exactly. So when he came to Buncombe County, when he came to Asheville for a town hall, I asked him about it. And I had to kind of interrupt his town hall to press him because he really wasn't answering. And afterwards, I went up to him. I was live streaming, and I continued to live stream as I questioned him. And he said, I don't want to, promise something that I can't deliver. And I want to see universal health care by 2024. And we know that Joe Manchin isn't going to support Medicare for all, President Manchin here. And I said, well, what would you support? What is going to get, universal health care, if not Medicare for all, by 2024? And he said, well, I would support the public option. And I said, but Joe Biden threw the public option under the bus as soon as he got elected. And that is not even universal health care. So I made a video of this and I posted it on the local Asheville politics page. And people were like, what are you, working for the Republicans? You're going after our leading Democratic candidate. It's like, you can't have everything you want. And it's that same frustrating attitude that, they keep misunderstanding with this blue no matter who, that unless you offer a real progressive platform that the people will like, and if you don't couch it in these partisan terms like Democrat, Republican, Medicare for all, socialized medicine, if you do deep canvassing and you go door to door and you talk to these rural voters and you establish rapport and trust and you say, what's the biggest issue that's facing you? And they say healthcare, because our hospital sucks here right now. It was bought out by a for-profit corporation and people are being mistreated there. I was mistreated in the emergency room. Horrible. And everybody can unite over hating Mission Hospital. And why are we the only advanced country that doesn't provide health care for free at the point of service, But when you talk to people about that, there's sort of a backdoor way to get into that conversation. And then when you convince them that it's not the illegal aliens that are getting the free health care, it's
Right.
the wealthy insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies that are preventing you from getting free health care, then you've started what's called political education. And then you could start telling people, and that's why you can't get free broadband, and that's why you can't get free transportation and universal preschool, and et cetera, the whole 9 yards. And it takes so much time to do this, but that is how you get these people, right? So when Jimmy Dore, and they're talking about, allying with the right on these economic issues. I mean, yes, you can ally with your average Trump supporter if you do it in that fashion, but you're not going to ally with the white supremacists like the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. But that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. I think you could be pretty clear that you're not going to tolerate any of that. But, we were talking about Kshama Sawant when I interviewed Brian. He said, when they did labor actions, when they joined picket lines, they were out there with Trump supporters who said, to him, he says, I never thought in a million years we'd be sharing a picket line with a socialist alternative movement,
Right.
And, and Brian said, we wouldn't tolerate any, he said, after one of his quotes was, we wouldn't tolerate any misogyny or immigrant bashing on the picket line. You could make those lines very, very clear, as you should. But, that does not mean that, anyone with a red hat on is just, to be shunned altogether. I mean, you can't build power that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not possible to build power that way. And I think, especially the online left, but I think the left more broadly, and I think part of this is because the left is so online that they have a sort of inflated view of their own relevance, an inflated view of their own power. Beggars can't be choosers, right? I mean, there are not nearly enough of us right now to wield the kind of power that we want, especially with weak-ass coward representatives like Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna repping us at the national level. I mean, if they're going to sell out, I don't like to use the word sell out because I don't know if it's corruption that's motivating them. I don't really care.
No.
What they are is cowards. They're cowards. They don't have the balls to do what they have to do. And so you can't, we are not in a position to start narrowing our ranks based upon, okay, we don't like where you stand on this or that issue, or we don't like that you voted for Donald Trump. So yeah, I mean, I think we definitely need much more of an all hands on deck type of situation. And, Kshama Sawant is, she's in Seattle. That's a very blue city, so it's a little bit of a different dynamic. You're in North Carolina, so when you talk about sort of cross-party coalition building, it's a little bit different because there's a lot more of the diehard Trump base there, right? There's a lot more of the, as I call it, the "Let's Go Brandon" vote out there. But yeah, I mean, I think the same principle ultimately does kind of apply to both.